Hello everyone, my name is Yana, and I am a logistics specialist. In today's video, I will show one of the team's case studies directly, but I think this case will be interesting for those more serious enthusiasts who love to dig into analytics, understand why performance works the way it does, or perhaps residents will find new insights for themselves. This will be a completely different format from the Kiev region. I will be showcasing some great results, but not just what was done. I will also explain how it was achieved. Let's explain in a well-argued manner that the actions taken by the specialist in the account are not just tests for any random hypotheses, but they are based on solid foundations. Additionally, this will be another account that will prove that not everything in accounts is random, because auto parts and some specialists believe that the results achieved are random for those who are doing well, attributing the success mainly to seasonality. Here, we will show how everything correlates and depends on various factors. I want to highlight the period when I will mainly compare it to around 5, which is the period when it stabilized somewhat after the first tests. The start date for us is 17,600, marking the introduction of our new companies and the implementation of key adjustments. This is the date from which support began. In short, we are recording purchases here, and it is quite interesting to see which specific purchases were recorded before this period, primarily through 4 analytics, which included. And the 2 goals are conditionally the order through the cart and the one-click purchase, conditionally because both have a good percentage of orders, meaning she combined these conversions. However, in this video, I will specifically show the drawbacks of using these conversions in 4 analytics, why it is still worse than those purchases, and how, in the end, even in these seemingly modified attribution models, it positively affects the purchase, because we separately set up the purchase through the cart. In the one-click cup, specifically to separate them, we will fix them separately. Our VK is available for both of them. This is an advanced conversion tracking. What will I show here? I will show everything they thought I had drawn in the figures. This is the total cost, and the conversion rate is 86. During this entire period, we see that it is relatively stable for the client. It can be said that up to this point, the conversions did not particularly decline, and here it is clear that the average target cost per conversion is 136, 13, 25, 100. There are some hernias, and here the client tried to do something on their own. It was completely chaotic, and here is the start date. We tried to launch. It is evident that the cost per conversion is approximately similar to that conversion, slightly higher than it was during those initial periods. You made a certain shot. That turned out to be ineffective for us. As you can see here, there were 45 of the same conversions, or rather, there were 44, but now it is significantly cheaper. There are also shots here, and everything has leveled out now. Everything will be great here. By the way, in these conversions, can you see the village you are looking at now? 50 is exactly the same number of equal conversions, not the half conversions that were there before. These half conversions are not the topic. I will explain the purchase of 4 analytics now. The problem was specifically with these half-hearted conversions. This is basically the fundamental analysis. I will demonstrate the effect of this 4 analytics, as it is the only goal that has existed month after month. I have it recorded in a column. All conversion periods. Look here, already 15, 5 that no 6 from 17,600, 19, 19, I probably shouldn't even take 19. 19 is still an ongoing period. Now, let's take a look at the Chelsea history in the main age. So, somewhere in the data, I have this chart that we will base our analysis on. I will show that there can be significantly more here, and even the cost per conversion can be much cheaper. Here we have our purchases. The one-click purchase has been revised. By the way, it has been corrected to work properly. And yes, the purchase that was working here. So if we sum it up, the total amount might be a bit more, but in reality, the client had a completely different situation. The number of orders, meaning the conversions, was higher in the dirty data compared to the clean data, reaching about 1,500 at that time before July 14th, while this shows up to the 18th. I am showing this overall to illustrate how everything fits into the picture. Now I will explain. So the task was to set up the extended purchase tracking correctly so that the data was accurately transmitted. adding more substance to the performance, and stabilizing the entire history of the tracking, because this is a reminder. The results began before our work, meaning that it was already being consciously driven, so to speak, correctly in order to carry out all these tasks. However, overall, everything here is driven without any proper basis. Even here, the conversion rate of 12 for these same conversions has fluctuated significantly, and this is due to some external factors. They started right here. What is the reason for these fluctuations? There could be quite a few insufficient factors, although there are plenty of medications available here. Machine modeling, which is not functioning correctly on this project. Perhaps there is also the 4 analytics itself. It is currently being constantly updated from Google's side, and it may experience failures. Plus, it is not entirely accurate for most accounts in terms of tracking and scaling results. How can this be verified? Well, look, I have created this report using the report editor. I simply took the conversion action. I broke down the identifier of the position by days, took all the conversions to filter only the recent ones, and the 4 analytics are just here. So, here's the breakdown by day starting from May 15th, something like that. I have a comparison period here, 17 and 18 compared to 15 and 14, and this is approximately the period I took for comparison. I want to show the chase paper because the buyers will particularly see this, but I will demonstrate how positively the advertising campaigns are performing. Overall, it influences what the same 4 analytics do not notice, these cross forces that are now observed in purchases, which are much better for conversions and performances. And it provides more analytics. Well, I mean, the client should basically be at a level where this month we tried to be a bit more aggressive in breaking through all these things. They don't always turn out to be successful, but there it is. The longer you work, the more stable the results become. Of course, all these fluctuations and jumps will happen regularly because you need to understand the advertising tool of Google. It is not static, it is constantly changing, and this change is ongoing. It's not just once every 6 months or once a year. These are very regular changes. They are just adjusting their policies. The checks of the marketers change maybe once a quarter or even more frequently. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens once a month, let alone when talking about these tools, especially considering that this is a living environment. What I want to highlight is the main complexity of the model, attribution used by 4 analytics. Even though the last click was recorded on July 12th, the attribution model was set only for paid channels. Still, this is not enough for the performance of 4 analytics to work correctly. Here, only the performances were functioning. So take a look. I am taking the previous period. I want to see these more or less reasonable orders, and the orders. What I mean is, I want you to see in reality how many full orders the performance can generate on its own. This is, of course, not a completely accurate reflection, because there are still half conversions present, meaning that the figure I filtered now is simply more than 1 and the conversions are for the specialists. But this is the report that you can easily generate. You can check what are called non-long-tail product positions, as they generate more than 1 conversion during this period. Outdated for the previous one, what we see here is an average of about 725. 56. Of course, there are still some halves in the grid, and there are actually a lot of them, as you can see. There are really many, but we filtered out those positions that had more than 1 conversion. If we remove the filter now, the system will show us about 887 conversions, meaning 725 to 887. Well, let's say 800. 887, even without those 725, is 162 conversions, meaning here he considered 160 window versions as a positive result. The same story applies here. But in all periods, the company worked with somewhat different mechanics, models, scaling procedures, and adjustments. So, as it was introduced, the tasks that needed to be scaled were not immediately addressed either. To be within the limits, which is what was there, plus to enhance some things. Well, this is included, but at the same time, we need to provide more numbers that can be relied upon further. For example, I will take the same filter, But in the period when we were already working with advertising campaigns in a new way, I will take this same one more. It's the same thing, just based on data. With 1149, even with halves, and the same selection principle with the same categories. The beginning of the halves can even be significantly less, as you can see. So now compare that 725. We had correctly 725 divided by 1145, which gives us 63%, then minus 1. This results in a 6% simple increase. 36 and 6, even with these halves, but the product positions that are more stable in subsequent periods. We can already see this in the attribution model based on data, which is in the advertising account here on 4Analytics. Well, because if we look here, it will be very hard to see. So we have growth here. If we look at it, it's only 27%, but in reality, it's significantly more. As I calculated, 36 and 6%. Let's say we would like to round 35% up to 37%, but let's keep it at 35%. At the same time, we can even calculate approximately. They have 15, 14, correctly 15, 16, 16. Let's compare these periods as it was done here. I calculated 17, 18. Let's use 17, 18. And here the period that was 15, 14. Let's also set this to 15, 14. Just one day in place, even 2 guests, right? Yes. And now let's calculate what we actually ended up with in terms of the cost per conversion. I will find our figures here. For the bones, eat the ass of the day. So, let's calculate our costs. And now let's figure out how much this conversion cost us. Overall, looking at this, we had 104,442 hryvnias in expenses, not counting according to the attribution model. You agree that the models don't count this way. So what do we get here? 104,447 divided by 725. For example, let's round this to 144 hryvnias. The cost per conversion was recorded at 144 hryvnias, and now it is 135,135,757. Let's divide, since we had 1,149 there, but just to be sure, I'll check 1,149. So dividing by 1,149 gives us a cost per conversion of 118 hryvnias. If we divide 118 by 144, that results in minus 1, which is an additional minus 18%. The downside of the conversion price is that I conducted an analysis of direct purchases, meaning without considering that in previous periods such purchases were not recorded, making it very difficult to demonstrate this. Here's a hypothetical example. So, it can be said that there was a 35% increase in conversion units, even in those partial conversions. This is because we had a similar situation in the previous period with partial measurements, but at the same time, the cost per conversion became significantly lower. I understand this is a very super primitive analysis. I am showing, perhaps, not the exact figures one would like to see, but this is also a cool result, considering those moments, when the cost per conversion was quite high and then dropped to 109 hryvnias. What else was here? But here she stabilized again during this period. And by the way, during this period, from July 5th to 6th, the cost per conversion was relatively stable. Here, the conversion numbers are more whole, meaning you see 39, 40, and 20. There were some fractional numbers due to our attribution models, like one-click purchases. However, mainly it was 36 and 50. For example, on the 18th, there were 50 units. And now, what is the drawback of these 4Analytics? Despite the fact that I am conducting an analysis based on this 4Analytics, and it will be as follows. Why is that? I want to show you the next point, what the 4Analytics might not take into account, and what it will attribute to itself. For example, the same purchase on Google. and what it will show us. To do this, we will create a report. I really like it, and I will remove the product title. To make it more convenient, this report has been colored, and it is ready for you. So how can you access it? You go into your report editor, and immediately in this block, there will be a section called Shopping, Sold Items, or something like that. It will be the same product, but it will also remove. What can we see here? By the way, we can see something here that 4Analytics will not be able to see. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the previous periods before the start of the work, because at that time the IT specialists were not highlighted for me, they did not appear. So now I will demonstrate this to you so that you understand why I cannot compare this report, for example, with previous periods. If I select any previous period, the product identifiers were not recorded or transmitted. This is just a regular report in Analytics. In the reports on purchases in the online store, I will now show the differences between them. Here, in the last period, we have recorded 21 and 18. For example, I want to show that it does not take into account, for instance, the actual positions we have. For example, the colored positions correctly. So, presumably, we can find some or half conversions here, right? And, for example, the filter is more than, say, 0. We can now take the same conversions from the previous chase correctly. Now I will show you that something will happen here. So let's take a look. For example, we have a product position with a certain identifier that has generated direct sales. It has also created the same cross-sells, for instance, or even better, let's find a position that has only generated cross-sells. The Google system will take this into account, record it, and use it for optimization, meaning that the sale was directly related to this product position. If I turn to Analytics and try to find this product identifier 1479, during this entire period, I won't see any conversions for it at all, you see, meaning it wasn't purchased at all according to the attribution model. What will I take in this report for the children? While the analytics are ongoing, let me remove all the filters. I will take this same IT specialist and try to find 14,179. I will find it now, and change the entire history. And I won't even see half-hearted conversions here at all. And Google sees that there was a request here, meaning this product. What does this cross mean? The product was sold through a click on a completely different item. This is why the coolness of the purchase topic, even on the attribution model, is based on data, while others are not, even with similar settings for 4Analytics, that is, 4Analytics, does not see it at all. This is what she observed, perhaps, back in June. On June 12th, there were some 0.5 conversions, but that's all. For example, the conversion we can try is within 22 to 19. We can even add a parameter, for example, the game day. Let's find this product position. Apply and see that there was, for example, a beauty on June 20th, but she is not being treated for this. So, when everyone talks about transitioning from 4Analytics, you work with the purchase tag for this reason. Well, that is. But this also wouldn't have happened if the right work hadn't been done in the advertising account. I don't know, maybe this sounds very strange to someone, but I can't help but emphasize that the results are achieved directly by the team's hands, meaning that the team is the one creating these results. So here, adjustments, changes in structure, and traffic filtering are done, and the structure is excluded, where the video mentions that it is a discussion about the structure. Shopping is taken into account, meaning a bunch of different factors, including the correct settings. This is precisely the key to understanding what you will be feeding into your eyes. That performance. It seems, what is the result here? At all? It is not justified by anything. It correctly starts with a base, then some sand, another Prescott, and here we have an output to a certain picture. It is hard not to notice that there is a positive dynamic here. It is difficult, For example, not to notice a plus if we saw half-hearted conversions here. Correctness. For example, let's take July 5th and 18th, when conversion settings were also recorded, and let's take the same date in May as 5. Should it be on the 18th, or is there something with June? I am also aligning, for example, from equation 5, the 18 period post-factum adjustments lead to stabilization. So, what do we have? It results in some halves being less accurate, and for some halves, the cost per conversion is lower. We can conduct the same analysis here, and what I suggest we do is to ensure we see the comparisons and analytics, for instance, so that you can objectively see that this is not some fabrication, like my own. Let's take the period 5-5 again, for example, 5-18, and here we compare, for instance, 5-18. I take similar data. To make it more convenient, we look here, and this is already the paper chase, to do it honestly and correctly without this purchase, but we need to calculate based on the old models, because here we have the old conversion. We take less even units. Here we see about 410 conditionally, even with the same halves. We remove the filter, take the same filter, and I show you all of this step by step, so that if needed, we can do it in our advertising account here, 465 pieces. For 65, I clean up 465 400 here 87, at least full 410. That is, if I take the filter. Now, and less, for example, 0. Well, even if it takes less, it will be exactly less than 0. 100. $99. You see, here are the conversions 5, 0, 2, 0, 3, and they generate 72 full sales, while we actually have 410. So, we proceed. Then we look at the expense part correctly. That is, we take the same period. For example, what we had, 5-18, right? 5-18 with the same level in May. I take May because there were no. Here in all these various prophetic interruptions we had at the beginning of 5-18. Let's compare the equations, and now let's take a look at the cost here. For 10, 475 elementary. Let's compare here. The previous expenses were 54,000 divided by 410. So, wait, 54,472 divided by 410 gives us 132 hryvnias as the selling price. For the intermediary, it's probably even more expensive. Because there are halves, and now there are lower expenses for the same period, we will divide 43,893 by 465. Also, with the halves, it is already 94 hryvnias. So even if we compare this period of relative stabilization, that is, after all the argon particles, it is very difficult to make a very sharp jump quickly after 4 weeks. You can try to break through it when you see enough analytics, but it doesn't always end with a result, and here we see how much it has dropped. Here, as we saw correctly, because if we take May 5th, we will see that here our clicks have dropped. Of course, the cost and the conversion rate increased, and we had to roll back to certain parameters and be a bit patient during the stabilization period, making completely different adjustments during the stabilization of the advertising campaigns. But it is also clear that even in a relatively stable period, everything is still correct here. I wouldn't say that I took exactly 19. I didn't take it when the cost per conversion increased. I added up and took a more or less stable segment for analysis, and it turned out that there 132 hryvnias considering that half is correct, and here 94 hryvnias came in, which is also significantly less. If we take these 94 hryvnias and divide them by 132, that's also about 30%. The cost per conversion is even lower. So, when I analyzed the overall period from the 17th to the previous 4 weeks, we had a decrease of 18% in the cost per conversion, but here it shows even a stable 30%, more or less stable over this period, even with these posts costing 39 hryvnias. The cost per conversion during this time frame looks relatively stable. So, I directly compared it to what was previously quite good. In other words, the goal of this case study was to demonstrate that there is no randomness or chance involved here. There are certain things that do not depend on the specialist. Of course, the season can positively or negatively affect the overall dynamics of demand for certain items. But this is conditional. We can have a relatively stable situation. That is, you do not see that conversions have completely dropped somewhere. It is more of a smooth accumulation of mass, as everything here has increased conversions and so on, but this steady number of conversions should be seen in equal proportions and equal quantities. For example, take the same period, from the 12th to the 18th. Here. Well, they are not exactly equal here, because we have one-click purchases and left it on the attribution model. Based on the data, somewhere around 25 to 31, let's take an incomplete week, starting from 13. Here we can see 202 conversions. This is for the purchase, and there is not a believer one. This is not one of the conversions for the purchase. It's the same story. And please note 9819. Here is an example of a period of relative stabilization. What can happen in the account when the specialist knows approximately based on this analytics, which he does not see as entirely accurate. As of today, we cannot adequately analyze conversions because there may be significantly fewer of them up to today. And when we look back, the day after tomorrow at yesterday and today, there will be a completely different, more presentable number of conversions. And he knows how to work with that. This is what I wanted to vote on.